Hey, you got a light, buddy? Sure, kid. There you go. And your wallet. Nick, give him your wallet. What for? He's got a knife. That's not a knife. That's a knife. Oh, shit. Just kids having fun. You alright? I'm always alright when I'm with you, Dundee. God, that sounds corny. Why do you always make me feel like Jane in a Tarzan comic? Put on that hat, my friends. Put on that hat, because this is going to be a ride. Today's video is brought to you by Crocodile Dundee, one of the worst movies, but the best movies from the 1980s. And, if you haven't seen it already, The Gods Must Be Crazy is a phenomenal movie. Now, The Gods Must Be Crazy 2, kind of missed the mark. But that Coke bottle in The Gods Must Be Crazy represented everything that society is suffering right now. If you look back on that simple movie, that simple concept, if you haven't seen it yet, then I guess you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's pretty simple. Basically, it's like this. There's a tribe of Bushmen in Australia. I almost said Africa. A tribe of Bushmen in Australia that have lived happily in the desert for however many thousands of years without interruption or issues, except for perhaps the plane flying overhead intermittently. And then all of a sudden a pilot is flying over the desert and he throws a Coke bottle out the window of his plane. That Coke bottle lands in the desert. One of the kids is walking along, or perhaps it was one of the elders, finds the Coke bottle. Everybody's interested in the Coke bottle, not just because it's something new, but because it's the hardest thing that they've ever seen. The Coke bottle can mash roots. It can crush things. Out there in the desert, they don't have any rocks. It's just sand and wood. This Coke bottle becomes very popular. The kids begin fighting, and eventually one of the kids hits the other kid over the head with it because he wants it. Then it becomes a weapon. This Coke bottle becomes the key element in the story throughout the movie. Now, naturally, anything that new that comes into a society is going to be a tool, or it can be abused. But there's also the deeper metaphor of how we use these things, and how selfish we are, and how much we desire to have the newest, the greatest things, that we don't like seeing when others have something that we don't have. Even when it's a small community like a tribe. How something from the outside that is new, novel, that we hadn't seen before, can push people apart. And I think we face a lot of that. Not just today, but in every generation. Now, don't ask me why I used Crocodile Dundee in the beginning. I actually wrote down those words on a note card, line for line, because I was like, it's one of those things where people don't ever remember the wording right, because it's like, that's not a knife, that's a knife. But that's actually the proper context. And I was going to do a little skit where I had a wig to play, the different characters, and I thought, what's the point? I'll just do it at the beginning as kind of a joke. I like to joke around, even though my sense of humor is a little bit odd. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. It's difficult to know how to unpack it. You'll notice once in a while I'll pause it, and just for a second here, I'm kind of getting used to using my cell phone as a camera. I can't pause my video camera, my camcorders, or my Panasonic, or my GoPro, or any camera that I have except my cell phone. So if I'm out and about and I make a video and I get cut off or distracted, I might just delete it or never use it. And it's nice to be able to pause and continue my thoughts. But anyhow, this is another freestyle chat, obviously, which are my favorite kind, because I get things off my chest that I don't even realize I have on my chest. And so to get back to the main point here, and the main metaphor, the Coke bottle. This is where we're at, I think, with with technology. Technology is the Coke bottle that was thrown through everybody's window, and we are so caught up with it. We are so entangled with this technology that if I look back 20 years ago and somebody said, well, what if the internet disappeared back in, say, 98 or 2000? Most people would just go back to the usual way of life. It would not affect society very much. Even back in the Y2K, when people talked about computer bugs, I mean, sure, the internet had been around for a while, but it was not as readily available or as widely used as it is today. Nor did anyone use it for their cell phones. And that was something that came later. And I know for the younger generation today, it's hard to imagine a day without cell phones. But yes, we had them. Payphones were very common for calling and or paging your drug dealers. Uh, anyhow, we've got we've come a long way, and we've also become extremely dependent on this technology and intertwined with it, and it's difficult to escape it. In fact, I don't know if we can escape it without dooming our society because of the way that we're linked up through satellites, the way that our, you know, everything runs, not just TV and phones, but we're talking about tracking systems for GPS and satellites for commerce, for, you know, truckers, as well as the digital internet that we need in order to run the grocery stores, to run, you know, commerce. Imagine if the shit hit the fan and there was no electricity. How are you going to order something off Amazon if something happens with the internet or electricity? It's not going to happen. There will be warehouses loaded with stuff and no way to get it to the people that want it or need it. And so it's, I think, important to realize that that's kind of like the idea of the Coke bottle breaking, right? So if you fight over that Coke bottle in the desert long enough, eventually it'll break. Well, the same thing, and then you'll cut yourself. I guess that's even a better metaphor there, but the same thing will happen with the internet. If we don't respect it, if we don't respect each other, respect each other's ideas, learn how to talk with one another, have civil discourse, we're fucked. Pardon the language. We can't even have discourse anymore because it's hard to talk. I mean, like I mentioned in a video yesterday about censorship, that I can't even use the V word for the shots that people get because all videos talking about this will basically be censored and deleted by YouTube. Not only that, but get a strike against my channel, which is why I'm on this channel. But you know, I have mixed feelings about all these things. It's like this double-edged sword. Is that the right term here? I think, you know, it's funny. I never know exactly how to use that one. I think double-edged sword would mean you're screwed either way, right? So I guess this would be more like a well, no time for metaphors or analogies here. We know what it is. It's like the bomb. It's like splitting the atom. I see the internet is very similar, and it's hard for me to think of a better example. Splitting the atom could have taken us either direction. It could have given us limitless free energy with clean reactors, the ability to deal with our waste if we had focused on that. But instead we focused on dirty reactors so we could refine uranium into, you know, plutonium and make ourselves some nuclear weapons. And by the way, today we're getting back into that program. We're just starting to make more nuclear weapons so we can keep up with the Joneses. And this would be akin to, you know, going out in the desert and finding more bottles so you can defend yourself against others. And it would be the same exact result as those, you know, bushmen with their bottle. If everyone has a bottle and you hit the bottles together, they're both completely useless, right? They're not going to serve the purpose of smashing the roots or, you know, giving you the energy that you need out of it. And it's sad because that's kind of where we're at as humans. We're so busy fighting amongst each other, we can't even utilize properly the tools that we do have at our disposal that we've created. They are amazing. The technology is amazing. Looking around my room here, looking at the top shelf of books, a huge encyclopedia, illustrated encyclopedic dictionaries, books about herbs, about plants and animals, biology, mythology, microbiology, cannabis, herbalist Bible. I've got a lot of my herb books in here, but so much information at our fingertips, plus rows and rows of records. Just epic. Records that I can listen to that will produce music. And that's just the early format. I mean, it's easy to overlook these things. The speakers I have in the corner, the paint I used to paint this mural when I was in high school, and, you know, the stereos that I have behind me to reproduce this music. Everything is taken for granted. It is so amazing what we've brought upon ourselves and created for ourselves. It's easy to look at the negative of the what could be or how bad could it get. And it's important, I think, to stay to that positive aspect. It's like art forms. There's dark, dark artistry that shows the dark side of humanity. And then there's rainbows and unicorns. You don't have to ignore either one. You find a happy medium. And all of this technology has not made us happier. Longer lives and better health care has not made us happier. Well, I shouldn't say better health care. I should say any health care. You know, even though in the West, in the U.S., we have some of the worst health care of all the First Nations, not First Nations. See, I can't even use terminology anymore without it coming across wrong. I'm starting to find myself self-censoring and being cautious about the words I say, to the degree where I say First Nation, what I really meant was First World. But I'm like, oh, nope, those are Native Americans. Oops, I can't say Native American. I have to say Indian. Oops, can't say Indian. By the way, on that note, I usually say Indians when I'm talking about American Indians, I guess, knowing that they're not from India, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs and many of these groups actually still use the term, which this is a perfect example, just popped into my head, of what I'm talking about with how weird we're getting with the internet. I had a subscriber for a long time that we had a lot of great discussions. Then one time I said something about, I was talking about Indians, Native Americans, however you want to use it, in a video, and I mentioned in the video that actually I had heard from Indians themselves. They wanted to be called Indians because originally these were the terms that were used. Even though they were incorrect, they weren't from India, they still used the term American Indians within certain tribes, but not all. But it came down to some of the early wording. I mentioned this, and I was talking about wearing headdresses and cultural appropriation, things like that. One of my subscribers who had native blood or Indian blood was extremely upset that I'd even talked about that and insisted that the word Indian was not to be used. And I shared a link and explained where I was coming from and how even the groups, the Bureau of Indian Affairs that's run by them, they choose that name. And how touchy of a subject everything is. But through the technology of the internet, you know, this person, I haven't talked to them since. I don't even remember who it was, but it was a couple of years back. But this has happened a few times with different people who say are triggered by a certain topic, and you can't really discuss it with them. Even if you've known them for a long time, they just don't hear you. And you end up with these petty arguments. The same things will happen through your text messages, right? Or an email, or the people getting heated about things that are totally misinterpreted or misunderstood. It's all about the intentions, but people are looking for an enemy or somebody to fight against. But anyhow, I think that this is the downside of technology, the atom bomb of messaging, if you will. There's amazing connective possibilities with the internet, but we can also screw ourselves over by using it as a way to lash out and attack other people, which a lot of people do. Anyhow, those are my thoughts for the day. Thanks for listening. I'll leave it at that. It's been about 15 minutes, and hope you're all doing well today. I'm cleaning out my office here. I'm trying to get everything organized in my own life, and I've done a lot of thinking today about organized life, organized mind, and how even though I have stuff that, like I said, this science and technology has brought, I really want to get rid of it. It's like stuff can trap you, But, you know, I love my records. I love my stereos, which this one I pulled out of a junk pile a while back. Somebody's like, "Oh, do you want it?" It's an old stereo. It's a Sansui QRX 5500A. This thing weighs like 65 pounds or something. It's crazy heavy. There's my old Yamaha too. But yeah, that kind of stuff. A 60-pound beast of technology. You know, those were the technologies that people could agree on. Nobody was arguing or fighting over it, minus the stereo wars in the 70s. But I don't know what my point is. It's just that back then, 60s, 70s, there was a lot of real good competition, fair competition between companies, corporations, people creating, inventing, and building things. It was an amazing time through the 80s. You know, the technology was increasing, and then all of a sudden we had all the tech we needed, and then we just started fighting amongst each other again. Thoughts welcome. Please leave one. Talk to you later.